Yo, yo, yo. Welcome in, golf fans. My name is Joe Idoni. You've stumbled upon the Preferred Lines podcast. This is a golf gambling pod. We're going to recap the COG. We're going to talk about some controversial statements made from ex-media heads in the golf world. We'll touch on a little bit of AK's return. We'll get to Bay Hill. We're going to make some picks. We're going to do it all, and this show is proudly presented by Rotoballer. This is Preferred Lines. I'm at Tour Picks is where you can find me on X. Let's go.
Full 9 iron for him. They're going to go nuts when he hits this thing.
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Bay Hill week, baby. Like I mentioned before, the show is proudly presented by the good people over at Rotoballer. Lines is the promo code. That's LINES that will get you 10% off any weekly, monthly, annual subscription. If you get the annual, it brings it down to like $6 a month. It is well worth it. I post the market movers in there, course preview, power rankings are up every Sunday before the tournament starts. We do a PGA roundtable with myself, Model Maniac, Spencer Aguiar, Joe Nicely, all of us sort of giving and spilling the deets on our DFS picks. And the big thing, you get access to the Discord. I'm on the sickest run of my career in terms of betting matchups. 21-6 on the 2024 season. That's outrageous. There's nobody doing that. Get in the Rotoballer Discord. It is an outrageous run. You can still catch steam and be a part of it. I've been really selective, like 2 to 3, maybe 4 picks each week. Super selective. Keep it tight. Up the units. It's all systems go. Let's get on to Bay Hill week. A friendly reminder, to those new friends and those old. Welcome to the show. A like and a subscribe on the Preferred Lines YouTube channel goes a hell of a long way. My boy Ted is here. My boy Joe is here. Joseph Laparo is the man, actually. He sent me some sick gear from his home course. I really appreciate that, Joe. It's awesome. Michael says we're trying to get another long shot winner. It's the season for it, Michael. I haven't been there, but we're getting close. We're honing in. You want to talk Nap? We'll talk about him later. Subscribe, like the podcast, share with a friend. All those things help me out a ton. And like I mentioned, we're proudly presented by Rotoballer. As always, I welcome on a guest to this show every week. This week is a special one. He is a close friend of mine. We text all the time. We were in Vegas together where we first met. We played a little golf. He is a member of Big Golf Journalism Media himself. My man over at Golf Digest, the head of the table. Welcome back to the show, Steve Hennessey. What's up, brother?
Buddy, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate you having a member of the corrupt golf media on your podcast. You're going to piss off a lot of the live bots by having me on, but appreciate you, taking a stand for what's right in the world.
Anything for you, dude. I don't mind pissing the live bots off. They're already after me plenty, and you know what? They're going to be after me more. Breaking news to the Preferred Lines fan. Your boy has been credentialed by the PGA Tour. I'm heading to the Players in a few weeks. I'm going to have one of these passes. I think I get to go in a room. Maybe I'll get a chicken sandwich. I don't know what to expect, Steve Hennessey. What comes with this? Do I just talk to players? Do I need to get in line? Do I have a little thing that I raise when I have a question? Give me like pro tip number 1. I don't want to piss anyone off from like the Golf Digest team, or I don't want to make any incorrect moves. Do you have any tips for me for a first timer in the media room?
Well, you picked a great tournament to do it. The Players, is probably the best run tournament from a PGA Tour standpoint. That the media center is great. The food is phenomenal. So you're going to have a good time. Yeah, your badge is going to get you, inside the ropes. Pro move is before a tournament day. You want to get there and ask the tour officials, hey, can I get an inside the ropes badge for the day? They only have a select few. But, if you treat them right and, you're on their good side, they'll give you one. But you got to get there early because they go quick. So make sure you do that. Even during a practice round, a great experience. And that's how you talk to some of these guys, because the press conferences, at the Players, there's going to be 50 to 100 people in every press conference. So you might not get called, and everyone's going to hear your answer anyway. But to just kind of walk inside the ropes and, chat up these guys and the caddies, that's the best part of the week, I think. So, definitely slot some time to do that. Go on the range, chat up some of the players and caddies. The pro move, though, is not to go up to anyone while they're hitting balls, because no one wants to be bothered when they're at their office. Just kind of wait till they're walking in between the short game area or the range. And most guys, are happy to shoot the shit, especially if, you're not a member of the Big J Journalism Club. You're not going to grill them. You throw them something fun. They'll be all about it.
Is it can you talk gambling with these guys? Like, can you mention odds, or is it like you're not really supposed to talk about that stuff?
I feel like you could talk about it. There's the player integrity policy. So as long as you're not asking them for any inside info, just play it cool and ask them, some regular questions you and I would ask each other. I think that's cool.
So, Steve, you know that I'm not shy about taking a shameless, cringeworthy, like little selfie video from time to time. Is this like okay to do in the media center, to like sort of take people behind the scenes, been like, this is what it's like in here? Or should you just keep your phone put away when you're out there?
I mean, you could have your phone for sure. They're pretty strict about like their tour rights. So in terms of video that's on site, you could get in a little trouble there. So, you just ask the media officials what's good and what's not, and you're going to be fine. But yeah, a quick little selfie photo. I mean, you got to show the people you were there, of course.
Got to show the people I was there. Nobody's watching what I'm doing anyways. Let's be honest. But people
surprised.
are watching. I think people are watching the PGA Tour. I think some people. This week, Steve, Cognizant, the Cog, the Honda, whatever it is, this is like my baby, bro. This, I've been to this event for 12 straight years, and I was a little disappointed this year that what I was disappointed about, and I think Andy summed it up better than I could ever do it if you want to go back and check his tweet, but some of the ineptitude from the PGA Tour to self-sabotage themselves at times in terms of not anticipating the storm, moving up tee times, doing whatever they could to get a Sunday finish, setup officials castrating the bear trap, for lack of a better word, making the 10th hole play as essentially the easiest par 5 on the PGA Tour. And in my opinion, just overall like devaluing the identity of a tournament that was one of the few on the schedule that actually had one. And I think, Steve, the reason for it was to attract better players and get a better field in the future, because they don't want this stringent like assault of Florida, which comes in this week, Bay Hill and Sawgrass, that just beats players down and is so penal for any sort of miss that guys don't want to show up to PGA National anymore. Right. Is that the reason, in your opinion, why these changes were made and why they may continue to be made for this swing in the golf season?
Yeah, I think you nailed it with that last part. I think Andy went a little over the top with, the self-sabotage. Like, they got unlucky with the weather, and certainly could have started earlier. In hindsight, I'm sure they would admit that. But your point about, losing the identity of the Cog, the old Honda, like, I think the Tour asked themselves a question this year, and it was, would we rather sacrifice a little of that identity to get a better field? And they certainly did, right? The Rorys and Matt Fitzpatrick, Tom Kim, down the line. I mean, it was a good field going into it. And I guess they thought that was more important than, setting up this really tough course that we all love as, the insider golf fan. But maybe to attract the more casual sports fan, they thought, we need a few more names to compete a little bit. So whether or not that was, only this year that they did that, we'll see. They could always take the fairways back in a little bit. I know they added a ton of width that, kind of took away that identity as well. And the 10th hole didn't make a lot of sense. I think that was a universally accepted thing. And I don't, the bear trap certainly played a little easier, but like the first par three is at the 15th. I mean,
Yeah.
that's still one of the toughest shots on the PGA Tour. And,
It is.
it's not like those guys tore it up. They were happy to just find the green and have a 40-footer for birdie. So, I still think a little of the identity was there. I was also disappointed. And then, again, I think the tour has just gotten a little unlucky this year. Again, not to be a tour show. We spent most of our podcast this week kind of ripping the tour, but they've gotten unlucky in the fact that like this week, Austin Eckroat just grabbed the lead after like 4 or 5 holes and then didn't look back and no one really threatened him. Same thing kind of happened at Riviera once Willie Z kind of spit the bit. Like, it's just been a lot of unluckiness. And, the top guys haven't really showed up, but even if they did and like ran away with it, there just hasn't been the drama that we've seen in years past. And whatever the reason for that is, curious your thoughts too, but it's definitely been a lackluster start to the season, which is weird because in the last couple of years, it's been a great start to the season, year in and year out. So it has been a little strange.
Yeah, it has. And like I talked a little bit about this last week, but there's always been these sort of long shot stories, whether it's Knapp or it's Eckroat or it's Murray or it's Pavon or any of these guys that have happened. But I think what has created the compellingness of the drama that we enjoy about the PGA Tour is when these guys are in it, there's a David versus Goliath scenario where it's all of a sudden Grayson Murray and he's going toe-to-toe with Scotty Scheffler in the final stretch of a Sunday, or it's Pavon versus John Rahm. And there has to be the stalwart, the statue that these young players, when they're going into an event 150-1, have to go toe-to-toe with over the final 6 to 9 holes to capture that, to create that drama. And that's what I feel like is sort of lacking this season, because even if you look back a couple of years and you get guys who win the Sony and it's, you have your Hudson Swaffords in there and these different scenarios, but they're not really going toe-to-toe with the best in the game. And it seems to be a void where we have Cantlay and Xander and Rory and Scotty are sort of our top 4 right now on the PGA Tour, but they haven't really shown up late on a Sunday to provide that opponent for these Davids to sort of try to tackle this monster and this behemoth to sort of go toe-to-toe with.
That's a great way to put it. And like, think about last year here, Kurt Kitayama, a relative unknown, like went toe-to-toe with Scheffler and Hovland. And, that was compelling.
It was memorable. It was
really
probably the most memorable elevated event of last season for me, was Kitayama winning at Bay Hill.
Yeah. And now it's unfortunate, we have a smaller field. So, someone like Kitayama might not even be in this field this week. So you're removing a little of that with these smaller fields. I'm not in favor of that. But, this golf course is so good. And I mean, we've said it like the last month, this run of long shots should change soon. It definitely has not, but, it's another chance for the tour to get a decent winner this week.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you. So Pat Mayo's here, and he says, "Still tell Stephen to approve my column idea." I think, and I heard a little bit of Pat's show earlier, where Pat wants to rank the top 50 players in the world. And I think Pat should. I think he's qualified to do so. And it came apart because they were sort of discussing where Joaquin Neeman right now sits in those ranks. I've always been a proponent to more recency in the whatever it is, the OWGR, whatever system you want to rank golfers. We were talking a little bit about college basketball before. If the number 1 team loses 3 weeks in a row, they're plummeting down the rankings. They're not just going to sit at number 1 because they won an event 2 years ago. It's so much about recency in any other sport. You look at power rankings in the NFL. If a team goes on a month-long, a 4-week run where they go 4-0, they're at the top of those rankings almost always. I think, Steve, and most people will say that I'm wrong, I've got Neeman as like the 5th best player in the world right now.
Wow.
I take him. I think what he's proven is that right now he's playing better than Patrick Cantlay. And I think the top 4 for me are Rahm, Rory, Xander, and wait, who am I forgetting? Scotty, Rahm, Rory, Xander, Neeman, Cantlay. Those are my top 6. And I can't give it to Cantlay. Cantlay is shooting 10 strokes worse on Sunday than he is on Thursday over the opening events of the season. He's firing 64s on Thursday and he's firing 74s on Sunday. I can't give it to him. It's been too long since he won. Joaquin Neeman is proving it. And although the depth of the fields are inferior, I think the top of the fields, or at least the guys that he's going toe-to-toe with on Sundays to win, are superior.
Yeah.
So where would you put a player like Joaquin Neeman right now in your rankings?
Yeah. I mean, 5th is pretty high. I would say like maybe 12th or so, somewhere in the top 15. I think is like, without a doubt, it's tough to argue that unless you're totally devaluing all the lift stuff. And if you're doing that, you're looking at a field with John Rahm and Koepka, Cam Smith, and all these guys, and
DJ Bryson.
Yeah, I mean, it's the top half, right? Like if there was a Live versus PGA Tour like Ryder Cup at this point, like the top 5 guys on Live, I mean, they probably have the advantage, and that would be amazing. And that's what we hope to get to eventually if there's some sort of deal. But I'm with you. The world rankings have never made sense, and then the fact that now they're ignoring, some of the 5 top 10 guys in the world. If you're looking at it objectively, something has to happen. I don't know what the answer is. Data Golf does a good job. The weird thing about how golf operates, obviously there's 4 big tournaments every year. So, you have to value those over a longer sample size compared to, a team sport like college basketball, college football. But yeah, there's a way to include Live in this. There obviously is. We have to figure it out. I'm not sure that we'll get there anytime soon, but hopefully by this time next year, we'll be in a world where everyone's coexisting again. That would be nice.
Do you think there's too many players in a PGA Tour event? Not this week. There's only 69 guys in the field, but like a week like the Cognizant, or a week like the Valspar, or a week like the Valero. When we get up to 150 guys in the field, the only reason I ask this, Steve, is I've been thinking about it, like maybe shrinking the field size down it's gonna piss a lot of players off. But we've had a problem with finishing around on Thursday. Yeah. We've had a problem with weather delays. We had to cancel the final round of a tournament. We had to cancel the end of the Cognizant and watch it at 8 a.m. this morning with a ton of commercials. Like, it's become almost rare that we get through Thursday and Friday like on time anymore on the PGA Tour. And I don't know if it's a lack of accountability for the amount of players in the field, and if that's really feasible any longer, if it's a pace of play issue, or if there's just frankly too many guys playing at one time.
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like the perfect field size, and I've heard some players say this, is somewhere around like 124 to 136. So, you're losing like 25 guys, which makes a pretty big difference in terms of pace of play. And sometimes you'll finish around because there's 6 less groups that have to go. So I'm all in favor of more players than less. Like this week with only 75, I'd love to see a fuller field. At least there's a cut. I'm also a cut guy, but
big cut guy too.
Yeah. I think 156 might be too many, especially when there's sponsors exemptions and, 10 guys who, have no chance. Yeah. Get them out of here and let's finish a tournament, at a decent time. I think everyone agrees with that.
I'm trying to think of what to segue into next. You mentioned the cut, and when I think about Netflix Full Swing Season 1, there was a ton of talk about the cut. It was a hot topic for our boy Dan Rappaport and Dylan.
Yeah.
They love explaining the cut. But let's talk about Season 2. Season 2 out in 2 days. Yep. Steve Hennessey is one of the privileged individuals who have seen all of Season 2. I'm not going to make you spill any beans, but what was the most, I guess, surprisingly compelling episode that you think people are going to be like, wow, when it comes out on Wednesday?
That's a great question. I feel like, Joel Damon is back for a second episode, and people might be like, why do we need another Joel Damon episode? Like, there's so many stories on the PGA Tour.
That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah. However, I would say his episode might be the best.
Okay.
Obviously, we know Joel struggled quite a bit last year, so the cameras were around for a lot of that, and they captured a lot of real emotional scenes with him and his caddy, Gino Bonelli. So that was fantastic. You know, the access that they get is pretty insane. You know, the Ryder Cup, that carries a lot of this season as well. And, you know, obviously all the compelling storylines of the captain's picks, they had cameras with Keegan Bradley, Zach Johnson, as he's making those calls. Like, that's something that we only like get to hear about when Zach Johnson tells us. So, you know, to see some of the behind the scenes stuff, to see a camera on Keegan Bradley as he's getting the call, you know, that's like what Netflix is for, you know, and being at the Ryder Cup, capturing some of the behind the scenes stuff. I wish they were in the team room. You know, unfortunately, some of the players, I guess, weren't cool with that, but I think this season is even better than the first season. I thought the first season was great. So, yeah, a lot of things to be excited about. You know, if you don't have that on your radar, definitely, you know, mark down Wednesday with season 2 coming out.
Yeah, the sort of social media driven content, you're going to get clips from it. I think it's great. I think it's one of the avenues that is underexplored by the PGA Tour in terms of trying to grow their audience and grow the game. YouTube, like the European Tour, Michael Kim was great. And Michael Kim, I thought, was great and has sort of been one of the few players who have like sort of cracked the door open to the players' locker room lately. He did the show with Pat, obviously. He's sort of trying to break down these barriers. And he mentioned this week that many of the players have been, frankly, asking to do more social-driven content, like much similar to the DP World Tour has been praised for just this ability to adapt with whether it's Netflix or whether it's YouTube and sort of post-production, like actually making compelling content. Like you're able to chop together clips and it creates sort of a drama when you're able to sort of crescendo moments together. Right. And it's a much more exciting product because it's hard to do. Like you can't take away the live aspect of golf and say, we're not going to tell you what happened at the Cognizant. We're going to chop it all into a 1-hour episode and show it to you at the end of the night. Right. That's not really what I'm asking, but the evolution of the game to sort of create this additional supporting content around it, I think is something that's relatively underexplored. And I think is something that could help the PGA Tour with embracing this kind of activity.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely partners with Netflix and helping make all this stuff happen. And I think you're 100% right. We got to talk to a few of the guys featured in the Netflix series this year. And one of them was Keegan Bradley. And he admitted, like, in the past, he's always had, you know, he's never really opened up. Like, no one has really gotten to know the true Keegan Bradley. You know, that's just not a part of him that he felt comfortable exploring. You know, on the golf course, he's a pretty nervous personality, and you know, he felt like, you know, that's just not going to behoove him to kind of go down that route. But doing Netflix, you know, kind of allowed him to showcase a side of himself that, you know, people haven't gotten to see. So I thought that was an awesome, you know, thing for Keegan. And I think that's sort of how golf traditionally is, just kind of, you know, closed door, like, you know, just worry about the product on the course. Right. But I think Netflix and, you know, the fact that players can now trust Netflix, like, you know, they have a say, like if they say something that they don't want on camera, they have a veto power. Wyndham Clark told us that. So yeah, I think that level of trust is big to allowing more of this kind of stuff in the future. And obviously as YouTube golf gets bigger and bigger with all these influencers on YouTube, there's going to be more opportunities for people like, you know, Good and Bob Does Sports to do stuff with tour players. And that's the kind of thing that's really at the crux of, you know, the tour and what's good about golf. So they'd be smart to embrace more of that.
How about Golf Digest? You guys love the YouTubers, right?
Yeah. Oh my God, dude. I have to.
Why don't they like you guys?
I have to tell the story because I was playing golf with like the head of Play Golf Myrtle Beach that day when the news came out about the queue and the qualifiers of the YouTube influencers. And, you know, he and I the whole time talked about how good of an idea it was. And then, you know, a throwaway line in our story about it, you know, the fact that all you need is a camera to get on the PGA Tour caused the Bryan brothers to get all mad at us. They blew that out of proportion.
Totally.
But yeah, I mean, we're evolving as a media entity as well, and I think we're embracing that sort of stuff more than ever. So no, it's all good.
Yeah, I was just kidding. But hey, listen, one of the things I love is a good Zinger quote. I have missed a good Zinger quote that we can
Yeah.
hang on to and like make fun of. I want to like from a journalist perspective, like a lot of times this stuff is clickbait and totally taken out of context and run with on Twitter, and they'll post a picture of him with the quote and it looks terrible. But
Right.
he basically said that the PGA Tour has become a feeder tour for the Live. What do you think he really meant there? And, you know, if you like, was it taken out of context? Do you agree at all? What do you think the real meaning behind what he was trying to convey was?
Yeah, it's a great question. It really feels like Zinger sort of has some sour grapes. And if you read the details of that Golf Week story, they go into detail about, how he kind of he wasn't really given a fair shake in the contract negotiations. They just kind of told him, here's our offer, and then he countered, and then all of a sudden that offer was off the table. So I don't blame him for having some sour grapes. That quote, though, I mean, it's pretty interesting. I think it's kind of what a lot of people think at this moment. So, the fact to hear someone like Zinger say it sort of legitimizes that thought, I think. And, I don't know about a feeder tour. That's kind of going, one step maybe in the opposite direction. But, the fact of the matter is, you have guys like Tyrrell Hatton and Adrian Meronk who are going to be top 30 guys on the tour this year and go to Live. I don't think that makes it a feeder tour, but we're just getting toward a bad place in terms of the fans sort of being ignored and the product being just watered down on both sides of it. I mean, the Live product is decent, but it's just not what we'd expect it to be. And golf was just in such a good place, like in 2019, 2020. And it's just crazy to take a step back and think of like where we are now. You could have never have imagined that we'd have these competing tours with, players not the best players not being at Bay Hill this week. I mean, that kind of sums it up right there.
Yeah, the best players not being at Bay Hill. Like I remembered I tweeted earlier, like the clip of Bryson like driving the green here. Like
Right.
that was such a great moment that like everyone watched, right? People rooting against him, people rooting for him. Everyone wanted to watch. There was rivalries starting to culminate within the game, whether it be Brooks and Bryson or Scotty and Cam. And like, it was just in such a good, healthy spot. And now we're here. But you mentioned, let's talk a little bit about the Live product before we shift gears into this week. Anthony Kim week. So I guess my thoughts on it were, I don't know, Steve. I expected more. I'm like, is this was what we waited for so long? And it wasn't necessarily about what he played, but it felt anticlimactic to me. And part of me thinks that maybe that's how Anthony Kim wanted it to be. Like maybe he wanted his return to come halfway across the world in the middle of the night, under the radar. I don't want to do an interview. I don't want to do the 60 minutes. I don't want to tell my story. I know I'm going to go out there and shoot a 76. Right. So let's do it in the middle of the night in Jeddah and try to get is I want the eyeballs, but do I really want all the eyeballs? Right.
Yeah.
And it was sort of like halfway stepping in. And that's kind of how the whole thing felt to me. It was such build up to such a great story and a myth that was perpetuating like all the golf world for so long. And then it was just kind of felt empty in the end of it. Like, okay, is this is it? This is over with now? Is that what were your feelings and your thoughts on the return?
Yeah, I agree with you. It feels like Liv may have rushed it a little bit. And, I think part of it is probably using it as another negotiating tactic with the tour and getting another leg up on the tour. That's kind of the name of the game right now. Everything that either the tour or PIF are doing, like the tour announced this deal with LeBron and Drake today. Like it's just kind of like a negotiating matter. But yeah, Anthony Kim, like if he had played at Live Las Vegas, like Liv could have controlled the situation enough to where, people aren't going to be grilling Anthony Kim after his round or, before the round. They could have controlled it, and to where we could have watched him at a decent hour. Like
Super Bowl week too, like
Super Bowl week, maybe they didn't want to go up against the Super Bowl. So I get that. But I mean, they would have gotten more eyeballs than they did in Saudi Arabia. Like, I've been waiting 12 years to see Anthony Kim hit a competitive shot, and I just couldn't do it. Like, it was 3 a.m. and, I wasn't going to wake up. It's not the British Open. And I even went to the app because I hear you could watch every shot on Live now, but I guess that feature's not available. And then, if you watch the replay on the CW, they barely showed Anthony Kim because he was like 25 shots back. So, yeah, I don't know that it was handled well. I guess we know their reasoning for kind of rushing it out. And from Anthony Kim's perspective, I think he handled it decent. And what I mean by that is like he didn't show up at a mini tour event and shoot an 82, and then all of a sudden like the luster and the aura of Anthony Kim being broken down before he was able to get a deal from Liv. Like, he had a lot of money still on that insurance policy, and Liv was willing to pay him for the remainder of that. So he got paid at this point. Like, now he just wants a little taste of the competitive golf action. And I don't, you didn't expect much from him from a competitive standpoint. Neither did I. I don't think many people did. I think he'll get to a point where, at least he has a chance of shooting par. I hope so. But it was very anticlimactic. And, I think a lot of that has to do with, when it was shown, where it was shown, and just the timing was pretty poor.
Yeah, the bigger thing than, I think the more interesting thing than really even how he plays is the story. Like, I want to hear from him. I want an hour documentary. I'm sure, being a journalist with maybe the biggest golf publication in the world, that you guys have tried many times to reach out to anyone in his circle and be like, hey, can we do a full, you're going to be on the cover of Golf Digest in March. Let us tell your story. I'm sure everyone is knocking down the door, whether it's Netflix or whether it's documentary makers or film festivals or HBO or whatever it is. Do you think that part of the contract with Liv is they negotiated that that's going to be the home for his story? Do you think that that is eventually going to come out through their resources and their channels, or is it something that you think he's still going to hold close to his vest and get the 30 for 30 that he probably deserves a year from now that's going to blow the world apart?
Yeah, it's a great question. If Liv was smart, that was part of the contract, controlling all the content that's created around AK, because you're right, the interest is huge. It goes beyond Liv. Like, he was definitely talking to some major media organizations over the last 10 years, us included. And, I think those talks got decently far. And, at the end of it, AK decided, it's not in my best interest to tell my story. Maybe he just wasn't in a place in his life where he thought he could. It seems like he's in a different place now. He's got his wife and his daughter, and, it seems like he's in a better place, by all accounts, than maybe, 4 or 5, even longer. So yeah, I would love to see a 30 for 30 or HBO Sports thing on him. If it's just a Live thing, you don't get the full picture, because Anthony Kim will certainly have say in it. And you really need to talk to everyone around him and really paint the full picture of, what happened and why he did what he did. Because there's definitely, that's one of the biggest golf stories of the last, decade for sure.
Yeah. I would love to see it independently done. Like, I was, as a Browns fan, like, I was enamored when the doc came out on Johnny Manziel, like, just to hear, I knew what happened with Johnny Manziel, right? I knew what happened with Manti Te'o, right? But to hear it from them was different. And like, I think we all kind of know what happened with Anthony Kim. Like, I don't think it's as big of a mystery as we all think. We all pretty much can kind of draw our own conclusions there. But to hear it from him, I think would be a great story that I hope he's able to tell with some truth and some perspective. And I hope it's able to come through a channel that's fair to him, but also will speak the whole truth without an ulterior side motive, like maybe Liv may have in telling the story.
Yeah, exactly. It feels like we'll get there with him in like a year or so, once he's more comfortable being back in the public spotlight.
All right, brother. I had way too many questions for you. Let's get to a little course preview. All right, Bay Hill Club and Lodge in Central Florida, just outside of Orlando. I got a Dick Wilson design from the 1960s. If you ever played, Dick Wilson's done a lot of courses down here in South Florida. If you ever played one, they're kind of very close to a spitting image of each other. From what I've found, there's usually an easy par 5 down the stretch. You have that at the 16th here, and then a really hard finishing hole, which you get here. It's one of the purest tests of off the tee ability, in my opinion, in golf. You have to be able to have an elite blend of both power and precision coming from the tee box to compete here. Much like PGA National, in a sense, if you show up to this place with some uncertainty or questions, or you're dealing with a mystery miss, you're going to get exposed very fast at this golf course. It was the hardest on tour in 2020. That was, of course, due to a lot of wind. I think Tyrrell Hatton shot like 74 that Sunday and won. But annually, it's one of the most difficult courses on tour. And where it's tough, it's a long golf course. It's a par 72. But the penalty for a missed fairway is brutal. This overseeded ryegrass, it sits about 3 inches, is one of the toughest. And the reason that it is not only because it's thick, it's unpredictable, but the shot that you have coming in out of it is likely probably a 200-yard shot, and it's not any 200-yard shot. There's going to be water on one side, and there's no real bailout, just like PGA National, because you've got these flat bunkers on one side of the green, you've got water on the other, and you have to hit a precise sort of 20-yard gap to the perfect distance in between the two. The penalty for a missed fairway, according to Data Golf in 2023, was nearly a half a shot, Steve. That's 6 to 7 times more penal than tour average for a missed fairway. Like I mentioned, 20 to 30-yard wide fairways. The number 6 is, of course, the interesting hole that I mentioned earlier with Bryson driving. It's a 550-yard par 5. You won't find another 550-yard par 5 on the PGA Tour that basically plays at a 5-stroke average. Last year, it was 0.01 strokes it played under par. So it's tough. It bends all the way around the water, and you're going to see some big scores there. It's about off the tee game. It's about long iron approach game. You can sprinkle in a little bit of around the green there with the Bermuda and the Tiff Eagle greens. They're always fast, but we've had this rain, Steve, all January, all February, this excessive amount of rain here in Florida. The same system that delayed and caused the Cognizant Classic to finish on a Monday also rolled through Central Florida. And the thing about Central Florida, it floods. It doesn't really drain like southern and like right here along the coastline does. So water, I'm sure the courses will be in fine condition, but water tends to hold more in the middle of the state there. So I think it could play pretty wet. I'll be interested to see if they can get it up to that 12 and a half on the stimp like they usually do. And I doubt we see the firm and fast conditions that we're typically used to here. Slightly mitigated and a little slower this year, in my opinion, is what I kind of expect. Do you have anything to sort of add there in terms of your course notes or architectural things to consider?
Yeah, the only other thing you did a great job is the around the green stuff, the kind of shaved off areas that they tweaked up like 3 or 4 years ago. The superintendent there at Bay Hill, and
Yeah.
I think that kind of adds a little more level of difficulty. So your ball's not just stopping in the rough, but it's going down a runoff. And, now you have an awkward shot to a raised green. And yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think it's going to play a lot longer, even than the yardage of, 7,400 yards plus. And, you need that club head speed to kind of dig through that rough to move it out there and have a chance on these really long par 4s and score on the par 5s. I think that's what we also see here. So yeah, it's just an ultimate ball striking test.
Yes.
What I'm curious about, and curious your thoughts, like, we have Riviera, which is also a great ball striking test, and Torrey Pines. Like, do you look at performance there as well to see what guys are doing? Are those the biggest kind of bench points you think so far this season?
I've struggled with this and gone back and forth because I tend to lean that I'm looking at difficult courses more so than focusing so much on the Florida swing. Like if you're comparing this to PGA National or Val or Innisbrook or even Sawgrass, it's just a different animal in terms of particularly the length of your approach shots here. Coming in from 200 plus yards, you don't really get that at PGA National. You don't really get that a ton at Sawgrass, and you don't get it at Innisbrook. So I'm more shifting toward places with high rough, places with difficult scoring conditions. You mentioned Torrey Pines, you mentioned Riviera. I think those are two good ones. I look a little bit at a place like Muirfield Village as well, because in the past when it's been really firm and fast, I feel like it's played like that a little bit in terms of difficult conditions, the rough being up, and in major championships. I think this is a good prep for players gearing into the major season and coming to Augusta. We don't get many stops. And I think Andy brought up this point pretty well, is these tournaments that are playing 22 under par isn't the best preparation for players whose biggest 4 weeks of the year are not going to play conditions like that. This is one of those few weeks that I think provides a true test and really rewards the elite skill sets, like you said, from a ball striking standpoint, that allow for the cream to rise to the top in the most biggest tournaments and the major championships.
Yeah, I'm with you. Total driving, strokes gain approach. I think Rick had the stat that only 8 other courses on tour approach is more important and predictive here. So yeah, I think we're on the same page.
Yeah, 4th biggest greens on tour, but nobody hits them. They're like 10% less in terms of greens in regulation that you'll see. You mentioned the changes in 2019 as well, I think was a good point. I think it's Chris Flynn is the guy's name who's the superintendent, but made this place a lot harder. If you're going back beyond 2019 to kind of pull some course analytics and data, I think you may be doing a little bit of a disservice. I would probably stick from a data standpoint, particular to this course within the last 5 years, because that's going to be much more like it is played. And there was a significant change that took place there from 2019 on.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, let's make some bets. World number 1, Scotty Sheffer is back at the top of the odds board at plus 650, 6.5 to 1 for Scotty this week. He is your not defending champion, but he was, I think, was he second here last year, Steve?
Pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So he had a great finish. He was in the top 5 for sure last year. And of course, won it the year prior where he chased down Victor Hovland. Rory back playing again this week is 9 to 1. I actually saw 10 to 1 out there earlier today too. Then you have Victor, Xander, Cantlay, all in the high teens. You start at the 20s off with Ludwig. Anyone up here, Steve, that has your interest for Bay Hill?
God, I really want to bet Scotty Scheffler. I don't have the stones to do it. I'd rather sprinkle a little farther down. But, from what we've seen from him here and, the fact that he has had better putting performances here, that, that's obviously been his bugaboo. But, he's had some of his best putting performances at Bay Hill in the past. And you don't need that from him, to get a dub this week. You just need him to be, even or gain 1 stroke putting across 4 rounds. But, it's just not fun to bet someone plus 650. You could bet him top 10 at like minus 150. That's probably pretty square for me. But, that feels kind of lockish. I'm probably starting my card down with Aberg down at 20 to 1. I know course history is so sticky at Bay Hill. It's one of the most predictive courses we have for course history, but man, this guy is just built different, I think. And, the total driving we talked about before, he just has it all. He has the length. He has the club head speed. It just feels like he's competed at courses that are not a good suit for his game. And this is a great fit for his game. So, I'm getting a discount against Cantlay and Xander, who haven't won in so long. Hovland has question marks. Rory has question marks with the putter, although he's putted better here. Yeah, I think I'm starting my card with Aberg down to 20 to 1.
I don't mind it. Look, last year at this event, I had a top 20. This is how far this kid has come in a year. I had a top 20 bet on Ludwig. Nice. I looked at my card at 5 to 1 to finish top 20. So I don't remember what his outright odds were, but they were probably 100 or 125 to 1 to be that price. He was an amateur. He was still in college at the time. He got a special invite to this event, and he finished T24, and I followed him pretty closely, and he had a great week and almost cashed that.
Yeah.
But he didn't. You mentioned the perfect course fit. The thing with Ludwig, and I've spoken about this before, and what I worry about with all these guys at the top right now, none of them are really supremely confident like we typically see the world number one player, like we saw from Rahm, like we saw from DJ, like we saw from Brooks, like we saw from Tiger during their days at world number one. They've all got scar tissue, and Ludwig doesn't have it, right?
Yeah.
Scar tissue hangs around in golf.
Yeah.
You see the frustration on Scotty Sheffer when he has a putter in his hands and a 10-foot putt. You can see the scar tissue wearing on Patrick Cantlay and Xander Schauffele down the stretch on Sundays at tournament. You see it with Morikawa with the putter. All of these guys have this built up negative scar tissue that I think is impacting their performance. And Ludwig, frankly, just doesn't have it right now. Like, look at this past weekend. You think Shane Lowry doesn't have scar tissue at PGA National on the final Sunday? Like, this guy had Bob Rotella with him on the green, coaching him up to get him out of this negative mindset that's perpetuating him at this particular tournament. And he still can't get out of it. Like, it is a powerful thing, particularly in such a mental game like the sport of golf. And it has to be somewhat freeing for someone like Ludwig to really not have expectations or something there that's bugging him or a monkey on his back that's really weighing him down. So I really considered him. I haven't made that bet yet, but it's still on my radar and one of the guys I'm certainly honing in on. I have some interest on Rory. I mentioned the 10-1s. I watched him a lot. He was amazing at PGA. He had 2 bad holes at PGA National, where he is right there.
Yeah.
I didn't think this is a much better course for him than I think PGA National was in terms of fit. And he was still the top guy from tee to green. He was still the top guy off the tee by a significant margin. And, he's played 3 events this year. He is building now. So he's going to play now 3 consecutive events. He's going to play the Cog, he's going to play the Kings event, and he's going to play the Players. And then he's actually playing the Valero the week before the Masters this year. So he has really radically changed his schedule to build toward Augusta National. And I think that these Florida events are big. I love that he played one of them, right? Like, none of these other top guys we saw this week on the Florida sort of grainy Bermuda that we were talking, gave our boy Chris Powers some
Sorry, CP.
Again. But he was in the match. I'm sure he mentioned it was a long week for him, right? He was in the match. He was up at 7 a.m. on Sunday. He didn't finish until 7 p.m. Now he had to go to the Seminole today and play with his dad. It's probably been
don't feel too bad for him. He had to show up at Seminole. Come on.
Oh, poor guy, right? But yeah, I like the fact that he's playing golf. I listened to him very closely at the end of the Cognizant when they interviewed him, and he said that he's like looking forward to playing back-to-back weeks. He hasn't done it all year. He's excited that he got this week under his belt. He's looking forward to getting back out there and playing. And he really mentioned that he's sort of dealing with this left miss right now, but he understands that it's a left miss. And he said that's the biggest thing is he can play for it and he can account for it. And I think that he's sort of going to be able to leverage that off the tee game. The most magical putting week of his career by like 7 strokes here. I'm not expecting that to repeat. He was really bad on the greens at PGA National, but same with Scotty. Doesn't have to do much. Gain a stroke and a half putting, and you're so good off the tee that you can win a tournament by 3 or 4 strokes, gaining a stroke putting. So have interest in Rory. Have not, a full disclosure, pulled the trigger on any of these guys yet. The guy that I did bet, there was a 30-1 this morning, and I took Sam Burns. I feel like Sam Burns is really close. Now, there are 22s now, which there's probably other guys that I like at 22. But I think that he's closer to these top guys at Xander and Cantlay than we may give him credit for. And they're both ranked 4 and 5 in the world right now. I don't think Burns, if he can win a signature event or he can tackle the players, he can play good in a major championship. I don't think he's far from being that caliber of player. He's a unbelievable putter. He's extremely accurate off the tee for how much ball speed he's able to generate, especially lately. He's been close in a couple of tournaments. I thought that he could get it done at the Waste Management. I thought that he could get it done at the American Express, where he basically had it in the bag through 70 holes.
Yep.
So I think that he's on the precipice of a victory, and I think that he comes with a confidence as a closer to me that I don't necessarily feel with some of the other guys right now around him on the odds board.
Yeah.
So kind of shameless to take and say that I got a 30-1, but it's out there. It's just not in any of these books. The 22 is the best price right now, but that's the only bet I've made sub 30-1 is Sam Burns. Is there anyone, Steve, in this kind of middle range from Morikawa down to say like Zalatoris that you have interest in?
Yeah, well, now there's two names on your board there that I have interest in. They're both Wake Forest guys, so the Arnold Palmer connection. You know, I'm a journalist, so falling in love with the narrative. But Cameron Young has some great history here, and he's playing very well this year. I mean,
Yeah.
Kid can't buy a putt when it matters, and that really feels like it's hurting him. That was the case in Arizona too at Scottsdale. He was right there on Saturday, and then just a couple bad putts, and it feels like, you know, the confidence just goes away with him. I don't know what it is. Maybe he needs Bob Rotella. If he's not helping Lowry out, he needs to call up Dr. Bob. But, you know, you're talking about a total driving test, ball striker, like that's Cameron Young. And same could be said for Will Zalatoris. I was on him at Riviera. That really stung. But, you know, I got to go back to him here. You know, this is, again, like we talked about, kind of a similar test in terms of a total ball striking fest. And, you know, those two guys and Aberg, like I trust their ball striking as much as these other elites, you know, maybe not as much as Rory and Scheffler. And you made a good point about Rory too. I'm thinking about him. But Cam Young and Willie Z, like it doesn't take, it will require them to have a pretty good putting week, which might be asking a lot out of both of them. But if we get that, the ball striking we know is going to be there. So, you know, I'm willing to take them based on the kind of break in price we're getting at like 33-1.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I thought a lot about Cam Young. He was really good. Now, I don't know if it's decision making or what it is. I know he's bounced around, like he's on like caddy number 4 right now, but like he was just fan one into the water on 18, like right when he's in contention at PGA National. And I know a lot of guys did that, but the greats don't really do that. Like you're Cameron Young, you're so long, you've got 197 yards in. Hit the middle of the green and give yourself 30 feet for eagle, and you're going to make a birdie, and you're on to the next day in one of the final groups. And those moments have kind of sort of defined his young career, where I don't necessarily know if it's obviously somewhat based on execution, but I think the problem starts with the decision. And trying to maybe take on too much, that may be getting too far, trying to get inside of his head. But certainly a promising week and a nice start to a season. And Zalatoris, you can absolutely say the same from the Genesis, where it felt like he was going to make that win, and now it feels like he's all the way back.
Yeah, no, I think so. You know, 100% healthy, and you know the game looks like it's in good form. The putting hasn't been as bad as we saw in the past too.
Yeah.
So, and he tends to putt pretty well on these really fast greens like Augusta National. So, you know, I like the fact these greens at Bay Hill are, you know, should be in his favor.
Here's an interesting one, and this number has sort of continued to drift, and I'm just now seeing it pop up at 35-1. But man, Justin Thomas, that's a big number for JT, especially seeing how high we were on. I just pulled up sort of his profile here, but you look at from the Fortinet on 5th, 3rd, 6th, 12th, and then he let everybody down at the Genesis. Like people were ready to hammer him with the course history there. He made the hole-in-one earlier in the week, and that should have been the moment we all realized, like, you make a hole-in-one on Wednesday. We should have all gotten off at that point. I know that's not how betting works, but the approach numbers have really trended back in a very positive direction. You look here, 4 consecutive starts there. He was also gaining off the tee in 1, 2, 3, all 4 of those starts. And he's just got every shot around the green. He's amazing at these tournaments where there's an increased emphasis on scrambling and getting up and down for par from precarious areas. Justin Thomas really sort of excels there. And the putting is volatile as always, but the putting can be volatile like we spoke about for Rory, for Scotty, for Xander, for Cantlay. So Justin Thomas at 35-1 is 2-3 times those price, and it feels like a good bet when he's in that range. With Sabotage showed us a flash for a week, right? Fitzpatrick was okay for a week last week. Cameron Young was okay. Justin Thomas did it for like 4 straight weeks before the Genesis, where he was really peaking. Now he's back in Florida. I'm probably going to take that number when we get off the show here.
Yeah, it's surprising to see a JT number drift like that, given the good form he's been in. I think people are just, they see the Genesis and they watch him with Tiger and they see him do so poorly. And I guess that's why it's drifting. But, he's one of the most popular guys to bet on, from a average better perspective. So, yeah, that is surprising. And, yeah, might as well take advantage of it.
How about bulk, meat and potatoes range, 50 and above? We got Hideki here coming off a victory. We got Minwoo, our boy Lifford. I had to bring it up. Let's up, Tommy?
Go. That fired me up.
Yeah. I love to see Tommy in the chat. He's our guy. Make sure you get me the matchup picks, Tom. I'll be on it for tomorrow morning. I'll be looking out for your text. Benny on Minwoo Lee. So it was very interesting to hear the caddy conversations this morning with Minwoo and his caddy. Like, I thought that was fantastic. They must have had either him or his caddy like mic'd up, but maybe it was because PGA National was so quiet with no fans that you could hear like their conversations and their thought process. But he was really talking really candidly about some shots that he was going to hit. And he was like, basically told his caddy at one point, he was kind of behind a tree, and his caddy was like, can't you like cut it around there? And he was like, I can do that on a Tuesday, but not right now. So you could tell he was kind of feeling the pressure. And I thought it was cool to just like hear someone talk like that. And he got some up and down. He made a ton of eagles. Interesting Minwoo Lee play. Adam Scott got the sponsors invite is 60-1. Wyndham Clark 55-1. Seems like he's always underrated. Corey Connors. A lot of people like Harris English this week. Tom Kim, Henley. These are some names in the 60-1 range. It looks like, is this DraftKings? That's FanDuel. Looks like has the best numbers of pretty much any book. And then you got Jake Knapp. So Knapp this morning was 90-1. I got it in the midst of the crash down at 80-1. He's now 65, 55 in some spots. It feels like one of those bets that I just know is dead and was a fish of a bet when I took it, but I knew the number was crashing and just launched at one. Do you have anyone in this range, or how do you feel about Knapp's chances?
This is a great check to see exactly how Knapp plays against this field. I mean, he did it at Torrey, and that was great, but to go against the major elites, and now 3 weeks in a row after the emotional Mexico win, like I faded him in some matchups last week. That didn't work too well for me. I'm not going to be doing that anytime soon. This kid is super impressive, and obviously his game suits this course pretty well. Wyndham Clark would be the name that's interesting to me. I just don't get that he doesn't get the respect here. I mean, he's won signature events, repeatedly. Major champion, super long off the tee. He's got the short game as well, just like JT and the other guys we're talking about. And you're getting him at almost 60-1. It's crazy. He's more of a West Coast guy, I guess, but he won in Wells Fargo on the East Coast. So, yeah, that's a bet I'm definitely making if that gets to 60, especially. But 55-1 is nice.
He had a couple early in his career runs at PGA National where he played really well down here in Florida.
Yeah.
But it just seems, I mean, I think he's up to, the OWGR is what it is, but I still think he's like number 7 right now, like another good couple weeks. And he's on the borderline of cracking that top 5 and passing Cantlay or Homo with the wins and the magnitude of the wins that he's putting together. So I perennially, I think I'm not one to to try and question odds makers. They're smarter than me. They're smarter. They know what they're doing, right? They know what they're doing. But this price always strikes me when these numbers come out on Wyndham Clark, when you name the tournaments that he's been able to come through and get victories at in big time fields. He's not backing down from anybody. He's not scared. He's not nervous in contention. He's rising up in these big occasions. And you're still getting a price north of 50 to 1 on the number 7 player in the world. It doesn't ever seem like that bad of a bet.
Yeah, that doesn't add up to me. By the way, his Netflix episode is also very good. So
is he?
Yeah.
You kind of get to know him a little bit because he seems very
for sure.
Those players.
You would think he's just sort of a jock who kind of goes about it, but he really opens up in it. And, it's been talked about working with a sports psychologist and how that's really helped him. So there's a lot of that in the episode too.
Excited to binge that, man. I've been looking for a show. All right, my long shots video will be up tomorrow on the Rotoballer YouTube page, launching long shots. I'll give you my 3 guys tomorrow. I'll save that for right now. Give me one guy, Steve. So let's say 75 to 1 and above. It's a shortened field, but is there anybody down here that you like to win a big time signature event?
Yeah, he hasn't done much lately. I'm looking at Rick's cheat sheet here, and I'm actually not seeing his name. Is Sepp Straka still in the field? Did he WD or something? I don't see him. I thought I saw an 110 to 1.
150 to 1.
150. Yeah. I mean, he hasn't been playing great for sure, but this is the kind of course that you'd think would suit him. He's got the club head speed, big burly boy who could hack it out of the rough. And, he had a good start to the year, had a good finish at the Hero. And then I guess it was the Century. He did well, but yeah. So, that's why the 150 to 1 is next to his name. That was just kind of like a skill set wise who I thought would play well here. And Luke List is another guy, long off the tee, really strong. He has a 10th place finish here, 2019. Obviously playing exceptional, runner up at the Genesis. So yeah, those are 2 names off the top of my head.
Love it, dude. A couple of good long shots to wrap us up. Steve, what else you got planned for this week? Got any articles coming out, or when's your pod? Is it available right now? Who'd you guys have on this week?
Yeah, so we got 2 episodes this week. We had Steve Stricker on the pod that just was released today. So go check out the Loop. The Strick Show gave us a little tidbit. He wants to text Tiger to play in the Zurich with him this year, which would be fantastic. So we were urging him to go text them. So we got that today. And then Wednesday is this huge episode around Netflix. So we break down every episode and have a bunch of the guys I talked about on the pod: Keegan, Wyndham Clark, Gino and Joel, Tom Kim. So a ton of fun. So I would say there's a lot of spoilers in there. So wait to listen to it until you actually go watch it. But once you do, I feel like it's a fun breakdown. We had Shane Ryan on, Shane's one of the smartest people in golf. So it was a lot of fun to do that.
Really awesome, dude. Thank you so much for joining the show again. You're one of the best people to talk to when it's anything that comes golf, from betting to architecture. You're one of the best in the biz, my man. Keep doing your thing. Make sure to go check out Steve. It's Steve_Hennessy. Are there any numbers in there, or that's it?
Nah, it's a GD at the end. So.
Give the boy a follow. He's the man. Appreciate you, Steve. You have a great night, man. New house looking spectacular. I hope to see you soon.
Yeah, enjoy the players, dude.
Get together. We got to get back out on the course.
We will, for sure.
Thanks, buddy. Talk to you later.
See ya.
All right, guys. I apologize. The podcast ran over an hour this week. I'm going to keep sort of final thoughts short and sweet here and get us out of here. It was great to talk to Steve. I appreciate all of you for joining the show. And I just kind of wanted to touch briefly on how you fuel progress, and how that I've sort of done that is saying yes to opportunities that you're sort of on the fence for and seeing where they can potentially lead you. And it sort of rang home with me as, I guess, quote unquote, my hometown event here, but I really sort of embraced the Honda Classic when it was here and utilized it for content or whatever it may be. But I took the opportunity to always go and always be super passionate about that event. And that created little creaks in the door that kind of have opened for me throughout. It helped me, honestly, this event helped me get on the radar of someone like Chad Eckert, who started the Fantasy Golf Pod, to sort of help me out in the process of creating and cultivating this show. The very first episode that I was ever on the Mayo Media Net with Pat Mayo was a Honda Classic episode 2 years ago. He asked me to do that show because he knew of my passion and connection to this particular event. And this past week, I had the opportunity to go on with the golf bet guys. So it was really cool. Will Gray kind of set that up, and I'm flipping through after we recorded the PGA Tour app, and I go to the video section and I'm at the top of the PGA Tour app. It was really sort of a cool moment for me, and being so passionate about this event and this sport and really creating a connection with the people that hopefully watch this show has allowed opportunities that I thought I would never have. I'm going to the Players in a week and a half. The PGA Tour gave me a media credential. I'm like giddy about the whole thing. I'm telling everyone I know. I'm texting friends. I just think it is so cool, and I have to thank you all who have subscribed to this show, who have watched this podcast, who have supported me both inadvertently just by liking an episode or liking a tweet that I put out, and the people that have actually physically reached out through DM or text or whatever it may be, that have kept me motivated to trying to continue to make this show better and continue the progress. But it starts with passion. Find your passion, and there you will find progress. And don't say no when an opportunity turns out. My wife is the person who was like, don't, if those people want to get you on the show, you're not going into work. Like, she pushed me to sort of make that step, and it was the right move. And had I said no to those opportunities, none of this that's going on right now would even be possible. None of it's possible without you guys. Thank you for checking out another episode of Preferred Lines. As always, you can find me on Twitter at TourPicks. Subscribe to this channel. Get me over 1,000. Tell a friend. I'm out of here. We'll be back for the Players next week. Your boy's got a pass. I'll see you then. Peace.